they're the kind of thing that like can reprogram an 8-year-old and alter their entire life. You know what I mean? Like their whole brain chemistry is now totally different. I owe a lot to the games that impacted me growing up and changed me and made me think about storytelling. And I think the like RPGs were a huge part of that. It's, like would I have gotten into Dungeons and Dragons and started like making campaigns? Then that led to writing. Would any of that have happened if I hadn't played like an old computer game that's like Baldur's Gate or something like that? It's like this stuff, stepping stones to creation really over time.
Hello folks, and welcome to Author Adjacent, a show about the journey from hobbyist writer to professional author. I'm your host, Michael Vadney, author of Brownfall, a noble dark fantasy adventure. But today, we have returning guest onto the show, Jarrett Poole, author of Polycorpse. Welcome back to the show, Jarrett.
It's great to be back. It's
been so long.
It's been forever. Brand new shirt, totally different day, for sure. I've been waiting weeks for this return, and it's it feels good.
Well, man, glad to have you back on the show. Last time we were talking, we were just shooting the shit, like, to be fair. And it was awesome. We talked about, like, a little bit of your origins. We talked about a little bit of, like, your philosophy with publishing, what you have coming on in the future. We talked a lot about Polycorpse, which I really enjoyed doing, getting a little insights, and the musical inspiration for that was really fun. But today we're here to talk about video games and storytelling. And I would like to start off by asking you, how are you uniquely positioned to talk about this?
Uniquely positioned's a great way to put it because, there's a dime a dozen dudes talking on a podcast about video games out there. But so why me? I have been in the game industry for about a decade now, I want to say. Time flies. I started out in the social media community management side of things. I got my start over at a small mobile game studio that I will not mention. And that was mostly on social media side, posting, on socials, doing Twitch streams, answering a lot of support tickets. So if you are ever playing a mobile game and you're like, I played 10 flunky beans and I didn't get my one glorp glop, and then you write an angry email, I was the guy that got that email. And boy, did I read some emails. So that was my start. And then I went over to a company called Phoenix Labs, which is no longer with us, unfortunately. And worked on a game called Dauntless for a while, and it was still doing community management side of things, a lot of Discord, a lot of Twitch, a lot of social media marketing stuff, which you think would have taught me a little bit about social media marketing my own novel, but, that could be debated. Did that for a while, and then I had the pleasure of working with Corey Herndon, who is a writer for the game, and I think he also did a bunch of novels as well before. A very traditional sci-fi fantasy author, just a great dude, who, like many in the game industry, have a huge workload put on their desk, and I saw that workload and I was like, I could help you out. At that point, I'd run D&D for a while. I'd written my first novel, which is now delisted, don't look for it, but I was really getting into this writing thing, so they were like, yeah, you can totally do that off the side of your desk if you keep doing your main job, so like, congratulations, you have 2 jobs. Wild, yay. So started doing that on Dauntless, doing some mission writing, character dialogue stuff, but more importantly, being the guy that could go into the engine, Unreal 4, I believe that was, and making sure those lines fired where they should and the quests lived on the NPCs they should, which was a ton of fun and a great learning experience. Met some great narrative designers through that studio as it was kind of growing. And that was fantastic. And then it landed me, once I was able to put on my resume that I had that experience, over to another studio called Archaeact, also gone now. All these studios, like it's the game industry is wild right now, but Archaeact is also no longer with us. But they did VR games. So that was my first official narrative designer on my job, on my LinkedIn, whatever. And they were adapting Isaac Asimov's Foundation for VR. They made an adventure game. I think the original pitch was kind of like a Mass Effect style adventure in the Isaac Asimov universe, but on the MetaQuest. And I worked on that for about a year and a bit, I think. And that I got a lot of learnings happened real quick about making a game and shipping a game. And if anyone at Archaeact heard me say that, they're probably like, this guy wasn't there for ship, and I wasn't because I left. VR is a very tricky medium to work with. You are in headset a lot. It is warm. It is heavy. It makes you sick. I don't think I could stick it out in VR again. That's neither here nor there. But working in there gave me enough experience to move over to the Coalition, where I was able to work as a technical narrative designer on Gears of War E-Day. And I should also preface this with, I won't be able to talk anything about these projects specifically because there are a lot of NDAs and contracts that were signed. So if anyone on here is like, what's the story? I can't say. But, that was a fantastic experience. Coalition rocks. It was kind of a trip because I grew up on Gears of War. Like, I played those games in high school, and then all of a sudden being able to work on was an honor and a privilege, and it was very cool. And that got me my current job, where I'm now over at Electronics Art. And yeah, I won't say too much for that job either because it's the current gig and I don't want to get too into the weeds. But I'm happy to talk about like narrative in games holistically, less about project specific stuff, unless it's Archaeact because they're gone under and are no longer with us. So I don't think anyone's going to chase me down. Phoenix Labs as well. But yeah, I've been doing that for a while now. And my specific job is kind of, there's some writing, there's some narrative, there's a lot of plotting and pacing. The majority of the work is plugging it in and making sure the characters say the words when they have to. But I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing people, and I've been very fortunate. So that is a very long-winded answer to like why I can talk about video games specifically. So we can just shorten that all to all my opinions are 100% correct on video games, and all my takes are great.
You are the God King. We
God,
pray
no.
to you.
I have so many bad takes. I want to preface this all by I'm a bad take machine. So yeah, take whatever I say with a big grain of salt.
Well, we will also be very careful of the topics that we talk about so that we don't get nuked from orbit from satellites that definitely don't exist.
Yeah, I'll self-regulate. It'll be fine.
We got this.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So now that we know who you are and why you're positioned to talk about this, the first thing that I really want to ask you is, what are your favorite stories in video games?
The ones that make me upset, I think, which is mostly what I want out of a story. I don't know what that is, but I think like a good sad story or something that's very existential and reflective. In most stories, that's the stuff that I'll think about for days, weeks, months, years later. If it makes me feel anything on a grand scale, and a lot of that stuff it's kind of surprising where it comes from these days. I'm always kind of playing games and looking at games, and when it hits, and I'm always kind of surprised what's hitting me and what's not hitting me. Like I think one of the best examples of a game that like really, really hit me for its storytelling is Outer Wilds. And there's like, it's very minimal. It's you're kind of on your own exploring a solar system, and there are some wacky little quirky characters, and I thought it was going to be a silly time, and then all of a sudden I'm questioning the meaning of life. You know what I mean? Highly recommend Outer Wilds to anyone. Fantastic game. Very non-linear. You're kind of only unlocking the path forward by the understanding of the time loop, and there are no keys to find or like levels to pass. You're just learning, and with that knowledge you get to move a little bit further every time. That really surprised me in its storytelling because it's not like a very writer's game. It's not like Like my next one, like Disco Elysium, is like a very writer's game. It's like the amount of dialogue and storytelling and script in that game is insane, and it's beautiful. And it's like most of that game, I think I played the first version, which wasn't even fully voiced yet. It was only to deluxe where they added voice for everything. Was just, feels like when I tell people to play Disco Elysium, I'm tricking them into reading a novel, in a weird way. um, but once again, that was another game that I started, and I was like, you're kind of just a silly joke of a guy, and you think it's going to be a really funny ride, and it is. It's probably like one of the funniest games I've ever played, but it's also like emotionally devastating on so many levels. Like, it really disarms you with its humor until you realize how unfunny this character actually is when you think about it. Like, it's, I don't know if you play Disco Elysium, you play like an amnesiac, alcoholic, drug addict, burnt out cop, and he's a huge joke of a character. And then like there's a point in the game when you start being like, oh, this isn't funny. Like, this man is like an alcoholic and a drug abuser, and his life is shit. And it's all because of him. And it's, I don't know, it has these like incredibly profound moments that are just beautiful. Yeah, but every time I also just like dumb adventure games sometimes. Like, I played the new James Bond game, and like totally different hit. Like, I'm just like, it was great. It was a huge romp and stomp and adventure with charming characters, and I got to throw guns at people's faces, and that was fantastic too. But I think the ones that like really really linger with me are the ones that make me sad, which is kind of messed up. But I love a good sad story.
No, that makes sense though. Like, the sadness is one of those emotions that like really lingers with you when it hits you hard. And there is the end of Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong.
Yeah, read it, loved it.
Oh, okay. So the end of that book to me is so sad and beautiful that I cried when I was finishing the last bit of it. And it was just so impactful to me because it was so sad that everything went down the way that it did. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody. But it was also just like this mixture of like sadness and hope. And it was just like, it hit me at just right time. And you never know what kind of story, whether from video games or novels, is going to hit you at what stage of your life. Because me now being in like my mid-30s and stuff like that, the stories that hit me hard and linger with me, both in video games and in novels, are very different than the stories that really hit me in my early 20s. Like, when I think of really good video game stories that I ingested when I was younger, I think of like, I think of BioShock, I think of Bastion from Little Giant Games, and the storytelling that they did through the music in that. But if I went to those fresh now, I don't know if they'd hit me the same. So stories hit you differently depending on what stage of your life you're at.
Totally. Like, I don't know. I'm a slave to my nostalgia, as is probably fairly evident.
A
by
lot
the
of people, yeah.
humongous CRT and PlayStation.
I know,
back there,
the PlayStation
which I've
1,
been
I
going
was
back to.
eyeing that up.
It's been really fun. But like, yeah, a lot of those stories are like replaying Final Fantasy VII. It's like, they are kind of like, I don't want to say like rudimentary, but like they're the kind of thing that like can reprogram an 8-year-old and alter their entire life. You know what I mean? Like, their whole brain chemistry is now totally different. And I have a lot of I don't know. I owe a lot to the games that impacted me growing up and changed me and made me think about storytelling. And I think the like RPGs were a huge part of that. It's, like, would I have gotten into Dungeons and Dragons and started like making campaigns? Then that led to writing. Would any of that have happened if I hadn't played like an old computer game that's like Baldur's Gate or something like that? It's like this stuff, stepping stones to creation really over time. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, sad story is great. And I think if you can make me laugh and then feel sad and then even laugh again, then even more points. Things that can be funny. It's true for games. It's true for movies. It's true for books. Things that can be very, very funny and very, very sad, or at least make you feel feelings. Like, I have such respect for. Like, I just watched Nirvana the Band to show the movie, which is a stupid movie. And as a Canadian, everyone needs to watch this movie. But if you are Canadian, you haven't, please go watch it. But it is such ding dong humor. Like, it's just people being stupid, and it's so funny. But there's a point in that movie that literally makes me feel like I'm gonna cry now. And it's like, I don't know how they did it. It's like a magic trick when something is so dumb and funny and yet can make you feel. So I think Disco Elysium is very like that. It is incredibly funny, like to a point where I'm laughing out loud on my computer. And then other parts, I feel like I'm going to burst into tears. And I'm like, if you can pull off that kind of, I don't even know if that's like storytelling deception, but it feels like a weird bait and switch where you're like lowering your guard in one way. And then when the emotion hits, you're like, oh, you fooled me. You tricked me. And this is great. Yeah.
Oh man, I've started Disco Elysium, and then life got in the way, and I didn't finish it. But I'm also like,
It's long.
at the very beginning. Like, I started it to the point. This isn't going to be spoilers for anyone, because just how little I scratched the surface of what is happening here is you wake up in the hotel, and I've gone into the backyard where the body is.
Oh, yeah.
That's about it.
You got
I'm so early.
like 40 hours left.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like it's so early. I've played maybe an hour of it, but I've heard so many great things about it, and I do need to take the time to actually dive into it, because it's often writers that are telling me to play this game because the story is so off the walls and so good. But what is it that makes storytelling good in a video game? Because for the most part, when you're in a video game, it's like an interactive thing. You're there for the mechanics. But what makes story good there?
It's like a big mix of things, because I think before you can even decide what's going to make your story good, you need to really understand what kind of game you're making. Because there's a lot of games, like if you play the latest Baldur's Gate, let's say, you aren't really writing one story. You're writing hundreds of stories that could branch in many different ways and hit people very differently for different play styles, and you're making kind of the sandbox, which is like a whole other beast. If you are making something like, I don't know, like an Uncharted game, which is a very linear adventure, or maybe like a God of War per se, where you are writing pretty much like a 3-act Hollywood blockbuster. Both have their strengths and weaknesses. And there are other games that are kind of more sandboxy, like Outer Wilds, that like don't invest really heavily in dialogue and in a narrative in a straightforward way, but they present a world and a mechanic that speaks to you in a storytelling way. Like Outer Wilds is basically a time loop game. The solar system explodes every 20 minutes. You get to explore it, and everything you learn within that 20 minutes should help you figure out what's happening and why it's exploding. No one's going to look at you and say, oh, this is such a shame that this is happening, and I'm Professor Universe and here to talk to you about the blip blorp energy that is, eating the sun. Like that doesn't none of that happens. It is just you on a journey of discovery, which ends up creating the story that makes it feel like you are unraveling this onion and solving this puzzle. And it's very profound. It's very strange, but it's so radically different than anything I've ever played before. Maybe like Myst is kind of, no, Myst has a weird story too. It's kind of more upfront. But yeah, it really depends on whenever you start a game, you have to ask yourself, like, what is the story delivery mechanism? Is it just going to be through exposition and dialogue and cinematics? Is it going to be through the mechanics of the game and interacting and the puzzle solving? Does it even need a story? A lot of games don't. A lot of games are totally fine not having any story. I will play Balatro for 1,000,000 years and watch the numbers go up. But so it really just depends. And a lot of people, there's a lot of tools to be had, like it's like cinematics are one tool. And are you going to have an animation budget? Are you going to have facial animation? Are you going to have VO? Or are you going to abstract that and just have text boxes and like little character portraits? Like you kind of have to work within the tools that you can afford under your budget. But also that might just be intentional. Maybe you can afford facial animation, but you're like, no, I love a good text box adventure, and just like hone in on that. So yeah, it's it's tricky to know, really, but it's a culmination of a million things happening at once, and also a million people working on things. I think the crazy thing about working in games is that like you're working with dozens and dozens and dozens of people, and it goes through so many iterations, and like yes, there are probably lines that I wrote that are in the new Gears of War game, but also it went through a bunch of editing passes, and then it went through another writer, and then like I wasn't actually a writer on that thing, so like am I a writer on it, or it's all a stew? It's a giant stew. Everyone's cooking and throwing stuff into at once, so it's hard to tell where like one person's work begins and the other's begins there or ends and begins. Yeah, I can talk. So yeah, it's I feel like I gave a very very bad answer to that question, and just rambled, but it's a lot. Game dev is very hard. There's a lot of moving parts, and every game kind of delivers their story in its own unique way with its own special sauce.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and don't be too hard on yourself, because novels are like that too, where how people create novels, everybody does it differently. The way you wrote Polycorpse is different than how I wrote Crownfall, but we still ended up with a story. Something I am kind of curious about is, with your experience of storytelling in video games, how did that affect your novel writing with Polycorpse?
Yeah, so I think we spoke in the last episode a bit about how Polycorpse was more of a game pitch idea in my head of like I had this world and this kind of walled city that ran on the essence you would rip from these corpses. And then in the game, I was like, oh, it'd be cool if you like had to track them down, and you're doing like a musical mini game of sorts with synthesizers and electronic musical equipment to like basically earn currency to bring back during the day, so you can buy more equipment and stock up and continue the game forward. And then there was also like I of course want the narrative, so I'm like maybe you meet people out in the wild and you talk to them, and maybe there's like other people doing stuff and collecting resources, which is where the Marrowmancers came from, which are pretty much just organ harvesters. And then eventually I kind of kept cooking that world, and that core loop of a core loop in a game is pretty much just like what is the player doing constantly, and that core loop was very very simple game dev one of like go get resources, maybe get some narrative, and then go back to the city to upgrade. And then the more you upgrade, that'll help you get more resources. And then the reward loop was basically you would get narrative throughout this when you hit milestones. And it's really funny because now that I've put this book out into the world, I've had many people read it. Many people read it. I've had thousands read this book. No, I've had a few people read this book. And maybe because some of them are game designers, but they're like, whoa, this would make a really cool video game. And I'm like, oh, so I guess that kind of worked itself into the DNA a bit more than I thought. But yeah, I think a lot of my world building comes from like, will this be a fun video game? Will it be a tabletop RPG campaign that maybe you want to run? And then if I fall enough in love with the world, I end up just kind of running with it, I think is kind of the process that I've been doing lately. It's like, if I enjoy noodling on something like world building, which to me is kind of, I don't want to say the easiest step, but it's definitely the most fun and carefree step for me. And a lot of that kind of goes back to D&D and building video games, and like you want the factions to be there and the towns that you're going to visit and like the monsters you're going to see. And then all of a sudden, if I'm like enjoying it enough, I'm not going to get funding to make a full video game, and I'm definitely not going to make that myself. So I'll just write some stories in the world, and hey, that's fun. And now look, it's turning into chapters, and now there's acts, and now it's a novel. So I think that'll probably happen because I've had some other game pitches or game ideas that I was cooking that now I kind of like want to explore their worlds a bit too. Which might happen, which is almost dethroning my next project, because I had a game pitch that I was like working on with a friend, and it just never went anywhere because it was this huge thing. And I was like, well, there's no way we're building this whole thing. It's kind of like feels like a bit Destiny, where there's like a spaceship that goes to the Earth, and it's like a fantasy world, but then there's sci-fi kind of slams into it. And I was like, now I'm just like noodling on that world building. I'm like, I have so much fun when I'm in that world, and maybe I should just focus on that. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see
Yeah,
if I
you're
get
very
distracted or
much
not.
like a mood and vibe writer is kind of like the sense that I'm getting.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
enjoy being in a space and in somewhere within a world that is not my own. And if I enjoy that space, I want to inhabit it more. And then by inhabiting it, I'm just sitting at my computer writing in it. And then
Yeah.
if I'm enjoying
But
it,
no,
it's
like,
more fun,
oh, go.
you know?
But I could definitely see Polycorpse like as a video game. I was trying to look it up, but I can't find what the game is called. But there is a this moon themed adventure video game that my wife and I used to play together. It was like pixel art style where you like go out into the world and go as far as you can until you die, and then you start over, pick new champions, and keep going. But like the way you're describing this game loop of how Polycorpse really started, I can just picture the game in my head already.
So curious what
Especially
that was.
if I can remember it, I will send you a
Please
message
do, yeah.
because there are several like low poly like pixel video games that my wife and I have played together over the years, just like as adventure games and stuff like that. And that's very much what I'm picturing is a combination of two games, and I can't remember either of their names, which is killing me. But I'll look them up on whatever library I have available, and I will send you those later. But I can
Please do.
picture Polycorpse being a video game. Like I can see that game loop, especially when we were talking in the last episode about Vogelsinger. Helena Vogelsinger.
Yes, yes,
We're
that.
butchering this poor
Yeah,
woman's
I hope she
name, and
never
we
hears this.
apologize profusely. But I could see that as a video game.
Yeah, that was
That's really
definitely
cool.
the video that kind of spurred. They started the whole thing up and spurred all these like oh like I don't know, music as magic and as witchcraft and as, but also still retaining that sci-fi vibe of like, is it magic or is it just people doing sciencey stuff? Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows
Yeah.
what's happening underneath the hood?
I honestly like. I don't even want to get too into it. Like, I feel like it's a bit of a cop out, but it's also I don't want
Yeah.
to spoil too much of the book or anything. But like, I find with a lot of like science stuff as magic, you can really get in the weeds of like I need to explain exactly what this thing is. And I think a lot of the stories I enjoy are stuff that kind of leaves enough in there for you to
Yeah.
project onto and kind of have your own interpretation of, which I enjoy. Yeah,
It's both hard and soft magic at the same time. You leave a little bit of mystery. I think you need
yeah.
that.
I wanted that. I kind of wanted the ambiguity because I think the ambiguity of what they're doing is actually kind of core to like everyone's take on it in the book
Yeah.
itself. Because I think if it was pretty upfront, then I think a lot of people's opinions would change. But the horror of the unknown is much worse than knowing a thing. I think.
Oh, 100%. Like horror movies and stories that like put the monster in full light are less scary than the ones where I'm like, what the hell is in the woods right now?
Yeah, or even like one of my favorite shows is probably The Leftovers, which is like fantastic. It's kind of like
I'm
a
not
rapture
familiar.
story. It's like
Okay.
a 1% of the population just gets like vanishes one day all at once,
Oh my
and
god.
no one knows where they went or why it happened. And the show like isn't really concerned about telling you. It's more about like the unexplainable happening to people and how their brains have to just live with it
Deal with it.
and
Wow.
living with never ever probably knowing what the hell happened. And
Yeah.
then yeah. Yep.
So, getting back to like video games and like their effect on narrative and everything, video games tend to be like very modular in how their storytelling is done. Is that something that you pulled from like your experience working in video games into Polycorpse?
The weird thing about working on a big video game or any video game is that you're kind of responsible for like one small corner of it. So on some of the games I've worked on, like let's go back to Archaeact when I was on that Foundation game, Journey to Foundation it was called. If you have a VR headset, pop it on. But you get assigned like this is your level you're going to be on, and then you have to just kind of trust that everyone's doing their level that goes in and out of yours, and like you have to have an understanding of like where are you in the three acts of the story, what are the character relationships at this very moment of the story, and you kind of just have to work in that bubble, and it's very interesting, and it is very modular in a sense because you need to be able to just know where you live and what needs to get done. And I don't know if I've taken much of that into storytelling, but I do like breaking my stories down quite a bit. Like I definitely am a plotter, and I will do, here are the three acts, here are the scenes, here are the chapters, and then I need to sit down and know what's happening when I start writing and where I want to end up and the three things that I want to hit on the route. And then I just need to have that ready, or I'm just going to sit down, I'm going to stare at my screen. And I think that probably comes from narrative design and game design, because you need to plot everything out heavily across many different documents and many different mural boards and Excel sheets, and like, because everyone needs to be able to look at it and go, oh, if we're at part C of the story, part B leads to it this way, even though I'm not working on part B, but I really need to understand it. So like, good thing there's 10 docs about it across our database that I can look at. So I think that's definitely made me into a plotter, which probably made me a very bad DM for some point in my life, like Dungeons and Dragons, because I really wanted the story to shake out a certain way. I think I managed to pull off the magic trick of making it feel like it did do that, but while still having a pretty heavy hand.
Like I say, DMing, you definitely have to be pretty flexible and reactive to what the players are doing around you.
Totally.
Despite every plan that you have.
Totally. Yeah. If you had to ask if DMing or if game design was more of an influence in my writing, I'd probably say Dungeons and Dragons. Like, yeah, I think there's just something fundamental there that I've experienced for so much of my youth and that I put so much time into that just like lives inside me now, and is probably in a lot of my process of planning and plotting stories. Yeah.
Okay. So would you say, with D&D being so big in your like zeitgeist of storytelling process, then what would you say you really like pull from the biggest part of that to write your stories and your short stories? Like, is it in the world building, or is it in how your stories are structured?
I think world building's part of it, but I think when you run any tabletop game, you kind of just have to write character bios, and since there's, I don't know, the chaos element of your players getting in there, and you just kind of have to brace yourself for the way they bonk into each other and the way they adapt to situations, because like you said, you never know what's going to happen. So I think that has helped, at least in storytelling, is that where I will write the character bios and try to understand them a little bit beforehand, so whatever happens in the story and whoever they bonk up against, you at least know that how they react, which I hope helps it feel a little bit more dynamic. I think there is the scariest thing for new writers is probably like putting your characters in situations where they're kind of borked, or they're on the back foot, or something horrible is happening to them, or something they didn't plan has gone awry. And I think D&D probably trains you for that, because you're just like, nothing goes to plan, everything's gonna fall apart as soon as it starts. At least with the players I play with. So yeah, I think that has had a huge impact. What's your favorite campaign? What's your favorite? Yeah.
Oh, I mostly do homebrew campaigns as well.
That's what I like to hear.
Like when I used to run so I ran a game from level 1 to 20. It took like 3.5 years to do. Mm-hmm. And what I did for that one was, it took a while.
Scheduling
I had a very
alone.
dedicated group. What was that?
Scheduling alone is like very difficult.
I had a very committed group, thankfully. But yeah, what I did for that one is like I would take modules, some from different versions of D&D, and then I would homebrew the hell out of them to make them the version that I wanted it to be. So there is this adventure in 4.5 called Army of the Red Hand, or Army of the Red Hand, or something like that. And it's a really cool module, and it's about it's a classic, like an army of orcs and everything are coming in, and you have to deal with it and defend a city. And I was like, cool, there's a lot of good bones here. I like a lot of the mechanics and stuff, because I don't want to think of the mechanics, I want to think of the story. So I took that and I was like, all right, it's no longer an army of orcs. It's an army of hobgoblins, goblins, and other Fey-inspired creatures. Because now in the newest version of D&D, goblins and stuff are a little Fey. Um, and I made it so that the head of their army was like the Igwilv witch queen and stuff like that. So it was a Fey army coming at them, and I changed the story completely and just used all the mechanics from it. And I'll do that with mods all the time because you can take other stories and look at them. Like, Brandon Sanderson is a great example of this. He looked at the Italian Job, the movie, and wrote Mistborn, the book. And the only thing they have in common is that they're both heists. And you can do that with stories. You can do that with video games. You can do that with movies. You can do that with tabletop RPGs, where you can look at a story and be like, okay, I understand the bones of what is happening here. I want to tell my version of those bones.
Yeah, I think that's totally a fair way to look at it. And I'm like, I'd be very curious to see how many other authors started writing just by modding D&D modules.
Yeah.
And then you slowly just start to understand narrative templates and tropes. And all of a sudden you're just kind of working in like this narrative framework. And then unfortunately you start writing a book, and then that's your life, you know?
Yeah.
And bam, slam, you're trapped. This is your life now. You're a writer.
How dare we?
Yeah. I will say that I think I started writing novels when I was in game dev because it really gave me an outlet that was mine. When you work in game dev, you're at the whims of a million different things, whether that's changes from directors, whether that's budget restraints, whether that's time restraints. So many things can change. You do not have a final say on most things as someone who is a mid-level. You kind of just, you take the instructions and you go, and then you find ways to kind of you fight for the things you want, but it is always a fight and is always kind of maneuvering to get the things that you think would be cool in there. And it's always having to convince people, which can be good because usually sometimes you have bad ideas and people will be like not convinced, and maybe it's for the best that I didn't go in. You know what I mean? But in a book, you can do whatever the hell you want. That is my realm. I can write the story I want with the characters I want in the world I want, and no one's really telling me otherwise. So that's good. I also think it probably helped me prepare for writing groups and critiques. And I think the game dev world is you kind of go in and everything's being critiqued all the time that you do to make the best product. So once you get comfortable doing that, it makes writing groups good. I love my writing group. I've said it before. They are just a great sounding board and have great feedback. And you kind of, if you're experienced in living that life of criticism, you can kind of know what to take and what not to take, and not take things personally. So that, I think being in game dev has helped a lot for that. I've been in writing groups, or I've talked to some people who write and they're like, I would never go in a writing group. I don't need people to tell me anything. And I'm like, I don't think that's good. I think you need like a little bit of feedback here and there, just a little bit. So like getting comfortable in that space. And when someone says, hey, I don't like this spot, or I think this is dumb, you don't take it like personally. You're like, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That has helped quite a bit.
I love writing groups. Like, Crownfall would not exist if I didn't have a writing group to really get me started and to put demand on my work. Because I suddenly had a group of people who were expecting something from me every week. And for an early writer, that's invaluable.
Totally.
As is, like, the skill and the practice of people telling you, like, hey, that thing that you did wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
And they're telling that to help you. They're not trying to be mean. If you find a good group, but it's useful things to hear because, like, eventually, ideally, you're going to put that book out into the world and people are going to read it. And ideally, they're going to write reviews about it. And you hope that they're all good, but they're not all going to be because not every book is for every person. So this is like the kiddie pool version where you get to practice taking criticism on your stories.
I think that's a good way to look at it, for sure.
Yeah. And I think the game dev version is just like that on steroids.
Yeah. And like, yeah. And also just fans of video games are very intense. So like you kind of,
they are.
you know,
Very
like,
passionate
it's
people.
very, very passionate. is one way to put it. But like, there's a lot of opinions, and like some of them are good and some of them are bad. But it does kind of prepare you a little bit for that fire, which I kind of greatly appreciate. I have that background because I also wrote this book with a writing group, and I would come with 1 or 2 chapters every couple weeks, and then we'd look at it and move forward, and like I'd edit as I go, and I think that helped like a ton. Feel a bit bad. It is a tricky art, writing a novel with a writing group, because you have to like kind of jog everyone's memory a little bit of what the hell's happening, because it's like they probably
piecemeal.
they read this book over the course of like 2 years. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's a weird way to experience a novel and a story, but very, very valuable.
No, I agree. So we're nearing the end, but I wanted to ask you about a potential hot take that I think you talked about a little bit in between our sessions. What is wrong with Final Fantasy VII Remake?
Oh man, I feel like I said this as a joke and now I regret it. But like, there's
We
there's
can take
no.
it back. We can roll this back.
I'll gently touch on it because okay, I want to say first. I want to be upfront about this. It is okay to enjoy this game. On many levels, I did enjoy it. I liked hearing the music and seeing the locations and like the character models and all these things. And I was like, oh, it's beautiful. It's cool to see that thing reimagined on this level of tech, and fidelity. I think what they've done with the story makes me so upset on so many levels that like if you put 2 beers in me and ask me this question, like you're going to be here for 3 hours, and that's unfortunate for everybody involved. But there's just ways they've watered it down, like the fact that like you're really not an eco-terrorist in the new one. They never really wanted to let you be that radical, when in the first game, like, oh, you are doing eco-terrorism, like straight up. There are moments where they've replaced blood, and the reveal of Sephiroth is totally botched, in my opinion. They killed the vibe of like, who is this guy? They make you fight him in the first game. They've taken this game and they've just split it and expanded it to the point of so much bloat, and like it feels like there's like Nobuo, and the Kingdom Hearts aspect is kind of, or not Nobuo, I forget his name, but like the Kingdom Hearts of it all is really seeped in, and it bothers me. There are moments where things were really I'm just ranting. But like in the Gold Saucer, when you get there in the original game and someone's shot up the place and it's this horrible thing and everybody thinks Barrett has done it. And like you think that, the characters think that, everyone's like, oh my God, he's lost it. He's because that's the kind of guy he is in that game. Like he will do a radical thing to make a point about the destruction of the planet. He is sometimes not a good person. In the remake, as soon as you get there, they're like, no way he'd do this. We know him. He wouldn't do this. It must be someone else. And they spoil the whole thing. And then when you go down there to confront him, there's a scene where a character is supposed to take their own life. And it's like really intense and a really beautiful, dark moment. And they don't let the character do that. Like he something else happens to him. And then before you can even sit in the moment, they drop this boss character of this like wacky dude riding a giant mechanical frog on you to like fight. And I'm like, it just makes me so upset. But that's just the taste of my ire. It's fine. It is fine. It is fine.
It's still a fun game.
It's still fun.
I have not finished it.
It's still beautiful.
But I do need to.
There are things in that OG story that are just so dark and so very, very cruel and very, very upsetting and bleak, and it just kind of revels in that. And like this game, like when they drop the disc or the plate, and it's like, oh, by the way, like don't worry, like everyone was pretty much evacuated, it wasn't that bad. I'm like, that was supposed to be like a devastating moment that was like totally just undercut by like they're having to explain why it actually wasn't that bad really. And I'm like, makes me upset. But I'm happy I get to experience like the new orchestral compositions and the beautiful environments, and like, oh, don't even get me started on Cosmo Canyon. They made it into like a yoga hippie retreat in the new game, and it goes against everything that the spirit of Cosmo Canyon stands for. I don't know if anyone's still listening to your podcast, and I'm sorry. So I'm going to stop.
No, man, I appreciate. I asked the question, so yeah. I'm getting the answer that I wanted. I do appreciate
Someone had my book in their cart on like Amazon, and they just removed it. They were like, Actually, you know what? Never mind.
Well, actually, this kind of circles back because I remember reading Polycorpse, and as I was reading it, I was like, "This feels like Final Fantasy VII. Like the city feels like Final Fantasy VII."
I think Midgar was definitely
original.
on the mood board, and like Mako energy and all that,
Oh, yeah.
like was definitely
Oh, yeah.
all there for sure. I'm like, yeah, I love that city so much that now when I go, like, even as a kid, going to like industrial locations that are so horribly ugly and bleak in real life, I'm just like in awe. I'm like, oh my god, it's just like Final Fantasy VII. But yeah, that game lives in my heart for sure.
Your brain was rewired at 8 years old.
It
That's
was.
all
It truly was. I think that box of PS1 games that I got as a kid, because my dad got me a modded copy from a friend at work, and it had a bunch of burned games. Like that was in there, and I think it just totally. It's funny that these gifts, as a parent, you can give a kid, and you're like not even realizing you're like probably altering their entire life. Yeah, crazy video games. Let me tell you.
I know. But on that note, we are reaching the end of our time. Jarrett, can you tell the people where can they find you? Where can they find your books?
Yep. You can find me at www.jarrettpoole.com. That's Jarrett with 2 R's and 2 T's. You can find short stories there. You can find links to my book, Polycorpse. And you can find me on Blue Sky as well if you want to follow me posting at Not Crucial. I'm also on Instagram, more of a friends and family area for myself, but like I do post sometimes, I guess, if you want some really bad skateboarding clips. That's Jarrett_Van over there.
Nice. And we'll have all that linked down, so don't worry about it.
Oh, perfect.
Jarrett, thank you so much for coming on the show, and
Anytime.
I wish you luck on your kickflip.
Thank you. I'm going to work on it. It may never happen. I'm kind of just, it's a dream. At 36-year-old, it's a dumb dream, but, it can happen.
I think it's awesome. Yeah. All right. Folks, thank you for joining us this evening. And remember, until next time, let's be author adjacent together. See you. And we've done the thing.
Hey.